Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, a secretive health program for the elite only, a goal to live to 150. China's Project 981 back in the spotlight after Xi and Putin caught on hot mic last week. A veteran China analyst says the Chinese Communist Party may be using forced organ transplants to allow party elites to live longer, industrial-scale organ harvesting.
So actually, in the 2005, under the then leader Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, there was a major upgrade to that program. The new element at that time was the development of the organ transplantation from the medical phenomenon into an inhuman industrial chain in China.
A whopping $2.5 billion in U.S. tax dollars are aiding the Chinese Communist Party's military industry. That's according to a new congressional investigation. A U.S. congressman impersonated in a Chinese hacking scheme. The latest on how Representative John Molinar was targeted and why. Behind the red curtain of power in China, the elite live by a very different set of rules. From food and clothing to housing and transportation, Chinese Communist Party leaders operate under a parallel system, entirely separate from the lives of ordinary citizens. One example is Project 981. It's a secret healthcare and longevity program designed exclusively for China's elites. The goal is to help leaders live to 150 years old. Organ regeneration is one of its key priorities. The program was first exposed in 2019 and is back in the spotlight now after a hot mic moment involving Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. At a military parade last week, they were caught discussing immortality and organ transplants. While state-run CCTV moved to quickly censor footage of the conversation, both inside and outside of China, the phrase "live to 150" is now lighting up search engines across China. So what is Project 981? China's Project 981 was launched in 2005 and is focused on longevity and organ regeneration. Its official name is the 981 Health Project for Top Leaders. The project is run by military hospitals, most notably the People's Liberation Army's 301 hospital in Beijing. In 2019, the hospital advertised an ambitious plan on social media to help party leaders live to 150 years old. The hospital also claimed that by 2008, Chinese leaders had an average lifespan of 88 years, 10 years longer than their counterparts in the US and the UK. The ad was swiftly scrubbed from the internet the following day. But now, 6 years later, at the military parade, Xi Jinping seems to have unwittingly confirmed it live on state-run TV. The goal of helping leaders live to 150 was set in 2005, publicly advertised in 2019, and in 2025, seemingly confirmed by Xi Jinping himself. The cost of this elite-only healthcare program remains unknown. It's shielded under the same veil of secrecy as the Chinese Communist Party's official budget. And even more noteworthy, the timing of Project 981's inception coincides closely with the rapid expansion of China's organ transplant industry and mounting international concerns over evidence of forced organ harvesting from living people. It's a story the Chinese regime doesn't want the world to hear. A secretive medical program, an alleged organ supply chain, and a promise of longevity for the powerful. It's all resurfacing after a viral hot mic moment. Senior China analyst Zeng helps us unpack the chilling backstory. Zeng, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, the hot mic moment between China's Xi and Russia's Vladimir Putin are still making the headlines to the point that, some media have actually taken it down due to pressure from the Chinese regime. Why do you think that hot mic moment is catching the public's attention so much? People often talk about longevity. Why do you think this moment is making the rounds?
Why make a big deal of that? Actually, it's because of in the last, I would say, 20 years, and there has been, circling around about in China, Chinese government has been doing this organ harvesting to extend the longevity of their top leaders. It is something that people, some people believe it. The public generally, is looking at this with a suspicious eye. But this hot mic, actually, I think it alerts the media Actually, the video came from CCTV's own footage. Okay, actually, as they recorded, they were not aware of it about that themselves. But some media, I think it's BBC, they've been hearing this, with a sensitive ear of a media, they dug into it, and then actually, I think they amplified the volume to make this a matter. But once that is made public, then whoever has the insight about the organ harvesting practice of the CCP or the Chinese government, then they start to open it up. Then that touched a sensitive nerve because it's something that it really exists. It does exist. That's what I know. I've been reporting this for nearly 20 years, okay? And it does touch the sensitive nerve, so they jump up, try to cover it up. But it's like, water already spilled. They try to retrieve the spilled water. That's essentially what is happening. It's very, very awkward to them and only make this matter even bigger.
A lot of people are asking, well, where's this organ supply coming from that they're talking about just continuously transplanting, right? Well, you need bodies for that. So who's providing all of these organs? Just shed a bit of light on that for us. Where is the bulk of this coming from?
Okay, let's back up a little bit. There's a story behind this. Just actually not long after the CCP established its rule, okay, starting from the Mao Zedong era, the party has been providing the top leadership with special medical, protection, and to the party, their ruling class, that's a privileged class, okay. So they have been treating their top leaders just like that, always with special treatment, special care, and so actually in the 2005, under the then leader Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, there was a major upgrade to that program. It's called the 981 Leaders Health Project. The most actually important new element at that time was the development of the organ transplantation from the medical phenomenon into a inhuman industrial chain in China. From the year 1999 to the year 2005, due to the persecution of Falun Gong, the CCP suddenly, they obtained a previously unavailable and to them a precious organ bank. Basically detained Falun Gong practitioners. This is a meditation exercise group that is, viewed by the CCP as the enemy of the party. So they retain many of them, and they practice meditation. They're very healthy, and they took their organ and then transplant them to restore the failing health of party leaders. And actually, in that 6 short years, the number of liver transplantation in China grew from an accumulative 135 before 1999 to more than 15,000 in 2006. That's an astounding 180-fold growth. That experience brought about this major upgrade of this to this 981 program. And then about 10 years later, by March 2014, this program has advanced to a full industrialization. So in that month of that year, in Beijing's Haidian Haidian district, the 981 Health Technology Group company was established. This 981 company, they have served over 3,000, they call it a million level leader members. So they got the 3,000 members, elite members, who could be their patients or the customers, however you call it. So in recent years, what happened in China is that there has been a lot of report about the high school students suddenly gone missing. And then they may well be the source of live organ harvesting. And because once this practice become commercialized and the demand surged, and then the crime inevitably spread across the society. You need to understand that down the chain, there's other companies who saw this as they are the supplier of the organ, and then at that time, about 10 years ago, it's $100,000 for a kidney, and $200,000 to $300,000 for liver, and then this has driven various illegal means and faked accidents. And persecution, and even armed group, using violence to obtain organs. That has been happening in China. So within the CCP's top class, when the organ failed, it's simply replaced. And then they do that again and again. That way, the top leader keep lying and keep living on, and then they don't die, for a while. And then what is most scary is this, Tiffany, such organ transplantation has become an important gift of CCP to bribe world leaders. They use this to corrupt world leaders. That's possibly one reason, the reason why Xi Jinping mentioned this in that group, where you got like 20 to 30, leaders of those countries in Beijing. So this is I would say this is the general background that I see it.
As you mentioned, the 981 project, right, kind of this like special three-tier system to help their selected elites, if you will, live longer, the best medical care, best medical advances, and so forth. Talk to us about that system, because it sounds like, what we've talked about so far, there are different systems inside of China, or different levels of care afforded to different types of people, if you will, right? The Chinese leaders are one group and their friends, and then how is that different from, say, the regular Chinese person on the road? If they got sick, what kind of care could they get?
Yeah, it's really just a two parallel world, okay? Not even just the medical, medical care. Actually, some of the water they drink, the food they eat, the vegetable they eat, the vegetable they grow, for those top leaders, they are all different systems. There's, due to the fast economic development, one price that China pay is the environmental cost. There's a lot of pollutions. However, those top leaders of Chinese government, those CCP, they are not impacted by that. And they have their own special garden, a special farm, special people serving them, and so starting at every step, they're just nobles. They're modern day nobles without carrying the name of nobles. And in China, actually, many people heard of it.
Well, Alan Zeng, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
U.S. tax dollars are aiding the Chinese Communist Party's military industry. A new congressional investigation details how the CCP is exploiting taxpayers through joint collaboration between U.S. and Chinese research projects. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Hundreds of Pentagon grants valued at more than $2.5 billion help to fund sensitive research in collaboration with Chinese entities. The entities are tied to China's military industry, some already blacklisted by the U.S. government. Republicans on the Select Committee on the CCP wrote, "There is no justification for U.S. taxpayer-funded research to be conducted with entities documented to have facilitated human rights abuses or support China's mass surveillance apparatus." The committee highlighting a concern that's lingered for years.
So what we found is that a lot of the research that is being done under this joint venture, if you will, is benefiting the military. And of course, we know that the Chinese Communist Party is becoming more aggressive at home and around the world, and is using every means to infiltrate our institutions and really disrupt our way of life.
The new 80-page committee report gave several examples. A nuclear scientist at the Carnegie Institution of Washington also held appointments at Chinese institutions. He used tax dollars from the Pentagon-backed research related to developing nuclear weapons. The Chinese regime acknowledged his work as contributing to national development goals. Chairman Molinar proposed legislation to require more transparency from federal researchers and stop the Pentagon from funding projects with links to blacklisted Chinese entities. The committee also made more than a dozen recommendations to the War Department, formerly known as the Department of Defense. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Chairman of the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, John Molinar, was impersonated in a cyber campaign traced back to China. A fake email with Molinar's name was sent to U.S. trade groups, law firms, and government agencies back in July. The email asked these groups to review a draft bill put forward by Molinar that targeted Beijing with sanctions. It seems the hackers wanted to know what these groups thought of the bill. Analysts say the attack came from APT41, a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group. In response, Molinar stated that, quote, "We will not be intimidated and will continue to expose these malign actions." The Trump administration is facing new pressure over its tariff policies. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday that the outcome at the Supreme Court could affect billions in federal revenue.
We would have to give a refund on about half the tariffs, which would be terrible for the Treasury.
And you're prepared to give those refunds?
Well, I mean, there's no be prepared. If the court says it, we'd have to do it.
The U.S. Court of Appeals ruled 7-4 in August that the president overstepped his authority by using emergency powers to impose duties. Solicitor General Dean John Sauer said has already asked the Supreme Court to hear the case, warning the ruling could jeopardize ongoing trade negotiations. Besson said there are other avenues to imposing tariffs, but did not offer any details. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett told CBS the administration has other legal tools it could use, which led the president restrict imports on or pressure countries into trade talks after investigation.
Here's an update on last week's arrest of hundreds of illegal immigrants working at a South Korean auto plant in Georgia. President Trump says he'll look into the situation and added that it hasn't affected his relationship with South Korea. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more.
President Trump painted the ICE raid on the Hyundai car battery facility in Georgia as a complex one.
When they're building batteries, if you don't have people in this country right now that know about batteries, maybe we should help them along and let some people come in and train our people to do, complex things.
The president says the U.S. has lost footing in a number of industries that his administration is now trying to revive.
And we're going to have to train people. And the way you train people is bring people in that know what they're doing and let them stay for a little while and help.
Trump says the investments of foreign countries are welcome, and the U.S. encourages them to legally bring in their experts to build world-class products. The president vowed to expedite the visa process for such workers, asking that they hire and train American workers in return.
At the same time, ICE was doing right because they were here illegally.
GSP in position.
On Truth Social, Trump called on all foreign companies investing in the United States to respect America's immigration laws. About 475 workers were arrested in the raid, the largest single-site enforcement action in the Department of Homeland Security's history. More than 300 of them were South Korean nationals.
As a result of swift and united efforts by government ministries, business groups, and companies, talks for the release of the detained workers have been concluded.
South Korea says it will seek ways to improve the visa system of Korean workers traveling to the U.S. to prevent a similar incident. Seoul will send a charter plane to bring the workers back once the remaining administrative steps are concluded. The majority of the detainees were sent to an immigration detention center in Folkston, Georgia, near the Florida border. The Hyundai plant, still under construction, is a joint venture with LG Energy Solution to produce batteries for electric vehicles. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, Russia launched the biggest air attack against Ukraine over the weekend. It has set the main government building on fire for the first time since the war began. China's exports to the U.S. plunged by a third last month, and U.S. exports to China also saw a sharp drop. We take a closer look. That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now to Ukraine. Officials say a Russian strike has set the main government building on fire. Here are the details.
Russia launched its largest air attack on Ukraine since the start of the war, the Ukrainian Air Force said on Sunday, counting more than 800 drones and 13 missiles fired at targets across the country. Authorities said it killed at least 4, including 1 baby, and set fire to the seat of government. Ukraine's Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko said it was the first time the main government building in central Kyiv had been hit. In a video said to be recorded from the inside of the damaged building, she said it showed Russia was not seeking peace and called on allies to help beef up Ukraine's air defenses. Elsewhere in the city, residential blocks were also struck, where officials said an infant's body was pulled out from under the rubble. Russia's defense ministry said it had carried out strikes on Ukraine's military-industrial complex and transport infrastructure, according to the TASS news agency. Both sides deny targeting civilians. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he spoke with French President Emmanuel Macron after the attack, coordinating diplomatic efforts and next steps. European allies have vowed to stand by Ukraine politically and militarily, but concrete offers of assistance are still being discussed. Russian President Vladimir Putin has pushed back on calls for a ceasefire, emboldened by strengthening relations with China. US President Donald Trump said on Sunday he is ready to move to a second stage of sanctioning Russia, but stopped short of saying what that entails. Trump has expressed growing frustration with Moscow, but despite repeatedly threatening further sanctions, he has so far resisted making the move. Also on Sunday, Ukraine's military said it launched an overnight attack on the Druzhba oil pipeline in Russia's Bryansk region, saying it inflicted comprehensive fire damage. Reuters could not independently verify the report. It confirmed the location of the video released by Drone Forces Commander Robert Brovdi, but could not verify the date it was recorded. Kyiv says its strikes on Russian energy targets are in response to Moscow's continued attacks on Ukraine and aim to undermine its overall war effort. There was no immediate comment from Russia.
On Sunday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. and European Union must work together to collapse the Russian economy. President Trump has imposed secondary sanctions on India for buying Russian oil. It's one of Russia's key ways to fund its war in Ukraine. Chinese exports to the U.S. took a major hit in August, dropping 33%. Customs data from Monday shows that U.S. exports to China also fell, down 16% compared to a year ago.
The slowdown comes as the Trump administration cracks down on transshipments of goods to the U.S. That's when Chinese goods are routed through other countries like Singapore or Mexico to avoid U.S. tariffs. In response, Washington imposed a 40% duty back in July on any shipment it suspects of being a transshipment. China's growth is now at its weakest in 6 months. Beijing has been trying to boost trade with other Asian countries and the European Union to counter trade tensions with Washington. But the U.S. remains China's largest trading partner, with nearly $283 billion in imports so far this year. Despite ongoing tensions, the two sides extended their tariff truce for another 90 days. Washington's tariffs on Beijing's goods stay at 55%, while Beijing keeps a 30% tariff on Washington's exports. But the peace is fragile. President Trump has threatened tariffs as high as 200% if China doesn't follow through on its pledge to increase rare earth shipments. For now, exports of rare earth materials to the U.S. are up nearly 23% as of August.
South Korea and Japan are boosting their military cooperation with the U.S. On Monday, their defense ministers agreed to maintain close ties with Washington, focusing on North Korea's nuclear threats and its growing relationship with Russia. This comes after China's recent military parade, which North Korea's regime leader Kim Jong-un attended. It marks the first visit by a Japanese defense minister to South Korea in a decade. The two nations also plan to collaborate on advanced military technologies, including AI, unmanned systems, and aerospace. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.